morning, everyone. My name is Chief Jim Schultz with the Willoughby Police Department. Thank you for coming this morning. This morning is dedicated to providing the public with new information on a cold case homicide. Our goal here today is to eventually solve why this happened. After my statements, I will introduce several very important people who will provide additional information to you all. After we've concluded our presentations, we'll answer any questions that you might have. We have a lot of information to provide this morning, so please be patient with us and hold all questions till the end. Thank you. To the family and friends of Nadine Major and to our outstanding community, this morning we'd like to provide an important update in this homicide investigation. Our thoughts and prayers have always gone out to Nadine and her family, the Major and Cohen families. Today is a day we thought may never come. 42 years ago, on Friday, January 11, 1980, at approximately 5 p.m., 25-year-old Nadine Major was discovered brutally murdered inside her apartment by her husband, Mark Major. The address of their residence was 375-19 Grove Avenue, Building 9, Apartment 101. Mark Major had just returned home from work that afternoon. Nadine Major was found deceased on the floor with over 40 stab wounds. The weapon was a knife from their kitchen. Nadine and Mark's 8-month-old son, Daniel Major, was inside the apartment uninjured and in a playpen at the time of the incident. From 1980 to 1982, our entire department worked countless hours trying to find the person responsible for this incident, this horrible crime. The commitment and determination of our department has never wavered all these years. The goal back then and today has always been to bring justice and closure for Nadine Major and her family. Every year since 1980, officers and detectives have worked every different angle they could find, and new details were developed over the years. Approximately 7 years ago, new information was discovered through our partnerships with the Lake County Crime Lab, the Ohio Bureau of Criminal Investigation, and the FBI's Behavioral Science Group. Of the items of evidence collected by investigators that evening in 1980, the clothing worn by Nadine at the time of the murder has proven to be so important in solving this crime. The shirt worn by Nadine was analyzed by the Lake County Crime Lab in 1996 and was found to not only contain Nadine's blood, but the blood of another source, a male DNA. This indicated that the killer had been injured during the time of the assault and murder of Nadine. The Lake County Crime Lab, throughout the years, has processed and analyzed countless items and DNA standards of individuals trying to find an identity to match. In 2014, Ohio BCI analyzed the shirt and developed information on the bloodstain pattern, which has also been proven to be very helpful in this case. And then about 2 years ago, Willoughby Police Detective Gabe Slay began building a family tree of the killer with the assistance of our crime lab, the Lake County Prosecutor's Office, and their Virginia-based Parabon Nano Labs. For 42 years, our department made a promise to the Major Cohen families to solve this crime. For 42 years, so many outstanding officers, detectives, local and national professionals have continued seeking the truth in this case. I would like to recognize a few who were so important over the last 42 years in this. Police Chiefs Crozier, Sherwood, Straube, and Beckwith. Assistant Chiefs Schmidt, Austin, Trem, Seville, and Tartaglia. Captain Smith, Lieutenants Clare, Lessick, Scosi, Begovic, Isley, and Witten. Mayors Anderson and Fiala, City Prosecutor Perez, Lake County Prosecutor Colson, the Lake County Crime Lab Directors Erdy and Suchanek, and the Lake County Crime Lab Forensic Expert Zavarella. Ohio BCI, Cleveland FBI, the FBI's Behavioral Science Group, and so many others who have never stopped seeking the truth for Nadine, Mark, and their families. Shortly, Detective Slay, the investigator responsible for breaking this case, will provide you with further details. Based on the most recent information developed, including DNA test results, it is our department's conclusion that Stephen Joseph Simcak fatally wounded Nadine Major in her residence on January 11th, 1980. At this time, I would like to introduce Willoughby Police Detective Gabe Slay, who will begin his PowerPoint presentation on today's very important update.
Thank you guys for coming. I'll show you one more light off. Can you guys see that okay? So what I'm going to try doing here in the next couple minutes is cramming 42 years worth of investigation by numerous detectives who put in hundreds or thousands of hours into this case. So some of the information that I'm going to go over has already been covered by Chief Schultz, but we're here to discuss the investigation that led to how we got to Stephen Joseph Simcak as the person responsible for this. So we go to our first slide, Mike. This is Nadine, her husband Mark, and their son Dan. This picture was taken just shortly before Nadine was killed. They lived together at 37519 Grove Avenue, which is Willow Grove Apartments, Building 9, Apartment 101. Like Chief Schultz said, Mark came home from work about 5 o'clock on that Friday and found Nadine in the dining room, stabbed to death over 40 times, with a kitchen from the Major's kitchen. Daniel was in the house in his playpen, just a short distance from Nadine, unharmed. The investigators found that there was no evidence of sexual assault, no evidence of forced entry, no evidence of robbery. No motive could be established at this time. Nobody knew why this happened, or there was no evidence of why it happened. They were able to determine by talking to people around the apartment complex that she was killed probably between 1 and 3 p.m. in the afternoon on Friday. The investigators at the time canvassed the apartment complex and found one witness who said, or who lived in Building 9, same apartment as Nadine and Mark. She said she saw a canary yellow car parked outside of Building 9 about 1 o'clock that day. She said she had never seen that car there before, and nobody in the building had ever seen it before. It didn't belong to anybody there. So they believe that could possibly be what the suspect drove there. And throughout the years after that, every lead that was established was followed up and exhausted. No perpetrator was ever identified. Few tips came in over the years that were followed up with detectives, but like I said, they never were able to find a really good suspect to further the investigation. In 1996, we resubmitted some of the evidence to the Lake County Crime Lab for analysis. They were able to develop a single source male DNA profile from a blood stain on Nadine's shirt. What that told us is the suspect during the attack injured himself and bled on Nadine's shirt. That DNA profile was entered into CODIS to try to find a match. For years and years and years, it was in there and searched. Nobody ever matched that profile. So in 2014, the evidence was resubmitted to BCI for blood stain pattern analysis. What they were able to tell us after analyzing the clothing worn by Nadine is that there were several circular blood drips on her shirt. This blood was Nadine's blood, and it was also the unknown male suspect's blood. What that told us is the suspect was standing over Nadine and bled on her. and had her blood on her, and it dripped onto her shirt. So either standing over her or kneeling over her, but we know it was a perpendicular drop based on the circular drip. Again, the DNA profile, since it was developed, has been searched in CODIS with no hits. Over the years, anybody on the suspect list from the initial report that we could find and track down, we interviewed, collected their DNA, compared it to the suspect DNA with no luck. And the case basically stayed cold. Until 2018, when we began working with Parabon Nanolabs, which is an advanced DNA technology company. They provided two services for us: phenotyping, which is predicting physical characteristics of somebody based on their DNA profile. What Parabon was able to tell us was that our suspect was a white male with blonde hair, blue eyes, and was Eastern European in descent. So at that point, we could eliminate a lot of people off the suspect list and not waste time investigating anybody that did not match these characteristics. The other service they provide, Mike, next one, is genetic genealogy research. So with genetic genealogy, we're able to take our suspect's DNA, entered into two databases, GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA. Once our suspect's DNA is in those databases, it's compared to any user that is a member of that database and who has consented to allow law enforcement to view their DNA and compare it to ours. We get a list back of potential matches, potential relatives of our suspect. When this happened, we got several matches, but they were very, very distant cousins, like third, fourth, fifth cousins. Very hard to work with that. And what this chart is, basically, it's a relationship chart, and it shows the amount of DNA you share with different family members. For example, you share about 3,487 centimorgans of DNA with your child, and about the same with your parent. And the further you get away from you, the further generations you get it from you, the less DNA you share. I think we'll go to the next slide. So with all the matches that we located in these databases, our genealogist from Parabon was able to create a genetic network. And what the genetic network is a family tree where the family members all share DNA with our suspect and also share DNA with each other. So we built that family tree was built back all the way to the mid-1800s to John Marasco and Anna Bonduranis. What our genealogist was able to tell us with a high degree of certainty is that our suspect descended from John and Anna Marasco. So at that point, we identified all the kids that John and Anna had, built their family trees out to present day, found living descendants, and either tried to have them upload their DNA to one of these databases or provide us with a DNA sample and test it to see if they were related to our suspect and how closely they were related. But what the Parabon genealogist believed is, based on the records, we didn't know all of the children of John and Anna Bonduranis. So we kept working until we stumbled across this death record. This death record is for Steve Simcak, who was born in 1883 in Bohemia and died in Cleveland in 1934. On the birth certificate, it indicates his mother was Mary Marasco. It's spelled differently than the Marasco from the previous slide, but based on the research that we know these Eastern European families, often when they came to America, the spellings of the names changed. But it was close enough to research it a little further, so we did, and we found that this Mary Marasco, the mother of that Stephen Simcak, was from the same part of Slovakia as John and Anna Marasco, and a record indicated that her parents were, in fact, John and Ann Marasco. So we built that Simcac family tree down to present day, and we found that Stephen Joseph Simcac lived in Eastlake, which is very close to Willoughby, obviously. Unfortunately, Stephen Simcac died in 2018, so we weren't able to get a direct DNA sample from him. So in his obituary, we learned that he had a grandson that preceded him in death. Go ahead, next one. A Stephen Simcac, his name's also Stephen Simcac, but he went by Stosh. So we found out that Stosh died in Euclid in 2015. The Cuyahoga County Medical Examiner still had his DNA sample on file. So they released that to us. We brought the Stosh's DNA sample to Lake County Crime Lab to be analyzed, and Lake County Crime Lab was able to tell us that Stosh and the suspect in this case descended from the same male family line. So at that point, we wanted to see how closely Stosh was related to the suspect. So we sent his sample to Parabon. Parabon analyzed the DNA and determined Stosh and the suspect shared 2,366.97 centimorgans of DNA with the suspect. So based on that amount of shared DNA, Parabon said the most likely relationship to our suspect would be siblings. We knew that was not possible due to Stosh's age. He was born in 1990, and his father's age, born in 1966. His father would not be old enough to have a child that would have committed this crime. So the next most likely relationship would be grandparent-grandchild, which that's how he is related to Stephen Joseph Simcac. So we wanted to get one step closer to Stephen Joseph Simcac. So in April of this year, we made contact with one of his children, Stephen Joseph Simcac's children, who provided us with a DNA sample. That DNA sample was analyzed by Lake County Crime Lab and Parabon. Both came to the same conclusion, that it was a parent-child relationship. Parabon further analyzed the DNA sample and found that the suspect and the child of Stephen Simcac shared 3,439.79 centimorgans with the suspect. And they said that is exclusively consistent with a parent-child relationship with a 100% probability. That means Stephen Simcac is responsible for this crime. What you have here in the middle is a prediction that Parabon believed the suspect would look like, and these are younger versions or pictures of Stephen Simcac, his Marines picture and his picture from high school. And the second from the left is the age progression prediction that Parabon had, and some later pictures of Stephen Joseph Simcac. So at that point, we knew that Stephen Joseph Simcac was responsible for this. So we wanted to find out who he was and how he was connected to Nadine or the apartment complex, what brought him there. So we found out that he worked at Lincoln Electric during the time of this incident, and they still had records from back then. And we found that in 1980, Stephen Joseph Simcac only called off sick one day the entire year, and that was January 11th, 1980. He was supposed to be in for the third shift, and he called in sick with the flu. And after interviewing family members of Stephen Joseph Simcac, we learned that in 1980, he drove a canary yellow Dodge Dart with a white vinyl top. Now, this is not the actual car. This is just a sample of the vehicle based on the description that the family members gave me. Unfortunately, BMV records don't go back that far, so we weren't able to get the actual documentation of that. So just a few little points that we learned about Stephen Joseph Simcac. He graduated from Benedictine High School in 1957. He was in the Marines, spent time in Santa Ana, California, and Jacksonville, Florida. Lived in Eastlake on Sunset Drive from 1963 to 2002. Then he moved to Bemis Point, New York in 2002 until he died. Married to the same woman from 1963 till he died. Retired from Lincoln Electric in 2002 after 37 years of service. During the time of the incident, he delivered flowers for Wycliffe Floral and worked for Vid Antonio's Winery in Wycliffe. and he has no criminal record. I'll go back to the first slide, just a little second.
All right, thank you, Detective. At this time, I'd also like to introduce Nadine's husband, Mark Major, and their son, Daniel Major, up to the podium. They'd like to make a couple of statements.
I want to thank the Willoughby Police Department for all the hard work that they have done. I thought Nadine's killer would never be found. The police, they never gave up. 42 years later, they found out who murdered Nadine, which is Stephen Simcack. I have nothing against the Simcack family. They had nothing to do with this worthless father they had. I want the Stephen Simcack family to know what kind of person their father was. He was a thief, a coward, a liar, and a murderer. He concealed the truth so no one would know what he did to Nadine. He stole Nadine from the family and friends. Most of all, he stole Nadine from me and my son, Daniel. How could he get up every day, look himself in the mirror, knowing what he had did? Only a coward could do that. He viciously stabbed Nadine 44 times, hitting her in the head, face, torso, ending with a large butcher knife stuck in her chest so deep only the handle was sticking out. Nadine was only 110 pounds. She fought for her life. She never had a chance. Nadine did not know Stephen or even had anything to do with him. She did not deserve this. If there's a place in hell, I know he's in it, and I hope he rots there. Stephen's action took a large part of my life and the life of everyone who knew Nadine. Every single day, the gruesome picture of how horrible she looked lying on the floor enters my mind. The only reason I'm telling you this is so that the Simcack family and his friends know what kind of person this pond scum was. He should never be looked at as a good and caring person. That should be left for Nadine. I discovered that Stephen was a proud Marine. If the Marines knew what Stephen did, they wouldn't be proud of him. I am going to contact the Marines to let them know what he has done.
Well, the time has finally come. After 42 years, I could finally put a face to the monster who took my mother from me, let alone in front of me, in the most brutal way imaginable. I am angry and upset that Stephen passed away as a free and carefree citizen before he could be identified as well as caught, in turn giving the ability for questions to be asked and justice to be served. I would wholeheartedly like to thank the Willoughby Police Department and all of the detectives and officers who never let this case file get dusty. I especially would like to thank Detective Gabe Slay. His determination, hard work, and new ideas made all of this possible. Lastly, I would like to express to the Simcack family, his children, grandchildren, and great-grandchildren, I have no animosity towards you. You had nothing to do with this and shouldn't be looked down upon for the sins of your father, grandfather, and so forth.
Thank you, Mark and Dan. So in closing, our hope is that bringing this update to the public, that there might be someone out there who may be able to provide more information about this case. If anyone has any information that could be helpful on this cold case homicide, please contact the Willoughby Police Department Detective Bureau at 440-953-4210. In addition, we encourage people to get their DNA tested and uploaded to GEDmatch and Family Tree DNA, allowing law enforcement to compare their DNA to other violent investigations. Doing this could potentially solve a cold case much like ours. This investigative technique is only being used for homicides, violent sexual assaults, and identifying unknown human remains. We also encourage people to go to justicedrive.org. Justice Drive is a free online portal dedicated to helping law enforcement agencies Victims advocates and victims raise funds to further advance criminal investigations. Justice Drive provided our department with assistance to further our investigation. We greatly appreciate all of the support that we've received from Parabon Nanolabs, GEDmatch, Family Tree DNA, JusticeDrive.org, all of our local partners in our community, and our entire community for their support over the last 42 years. Thank you. At this time, Detective Slay and I will answer any questions that you might have, and Lieutenant Begovic will direct those questions one at a time.
Without this obvious DNA and being able to trace back through the suspect's family tree, I mean, would we still be talking about an unsolved murder today? Just talk about the importance of that.
Yes, I mean, we would still be talking about it, we'd still be investigating it. You know, we're blessed to have such outstanding and unique individuals working here at our police department that for the last 42 years, this case has never gone cold inside our building. We've always had investigators, officers, detectives, people working on this case. We've been blessed to have a community, the Lake County Crime Lab, Lake County Prosecutor's Office, so many other agencies around here that have helped us along the way. This was a big advancement, the advancement in technology when it comes to DNA, and all of the things that Detective Slay has talked about has been incredible, and we thank those advancements moving forward. But we're not done. Like I said at the beginning, we want to understand why. We want to bring that bit of closure to the family and community so that we understand why. And so we'll keep working on this until we can get there, and that's why we're here today.
And just to add something to that, if this was maybe part of your question, Stephen Joseph Simcak was never a suspect in this case. His name was never mentioned in the report. He was never involved in any kind of criminal activity that would have made him a suspect. So without this, he would have never been identified.
Did you tell the Simcak family, and if so, what was their reaction like knowing their family member committed this murder?
You spoke with them?
Yeah, I did speak to the Simcak family. Understandably, they were upset and in disbelief. They didn't know their father to be this kind of person.
So as far as you know, there was no motive?
We have never been able to establish a motive. No, that's the big why. We know who did it. We know what happened. We just don't know what brought him there and why he did it.
How crucial was that evidence that was preserved back in 1980 to this case?
It was absolutely crucial. The fact that that we stored it properly, that the Lake County Crime Lab stored their evidence properly, and that we were able to preserve that for 42 years, because that evidence, her shirt and the blood on that shirt, is what broke this case. That was absolutely critical to this furthering this investigation.
I know that he did not have a criminal history. Do we know if he is linked to any other crimes or any other murders?
We have no information to indicate he's been involved in anything other than this.
Do you know if he was watching her? Since it sounds like her door was unlocked, did he just walked in? I mean, I know those are details you might not have, but any indication that he picked her for a while and watched what she was doing?
The investigators back in 1980 did an outstanding job with collecting evidence and canvassing the neighborhood and talking with so many different people. But those were a lot of details that we just haven't uncovered yet. We don't know why this happened. So those are good questions. We don't know if he knew her, how he knew her, why he picked that apartment, why this happened that day. And these are questions that we're trying to answer.
I was just wondering, was there, I mean, aside from the horrible murder of Nadine, was there any other disturbance in any other parts of the house, like anything stolen or anything like that?
It was nothing reported missing inside the apartment. Again, as Detective Slay said, there was no other crimes involved. There was no sexual assault, no robbery. Nothing was missing from the apartment at the time. So, again, we're not sure why he was in there. We know what happened, and we know who was responsible for it.
Just real quick, congratulations for solving this after so many years and for using genetic genealogy to the best of its ability. I think it's a fascinating new tool. I did have a real quick question that is tangential a little bit. A couple years ago, an inmate named Donnie Soki confessed to the murder of Nadine Madger. Now, of course, we know that's not true. Now, Soki's sitting in prison since 1985 for the murder of Plain Dealer editor Philip Porter and his wife Dorothy Porter. Do you think we need to reconsider his confession in those cases?
No.
You don't think we do?
No. Related to Nadine?
No. Obviously, we know Soki didn't kill
Right.
Nadine Madger. Do we need to reconsider his confessions in the Porter's murders from 1985?
We're familiar with Mr. Soki. We're familiar with what happened. We're familiar, why he was convicted and so forth. But we know that what happened with him is not connected with our case, so we've never looked into that. We've been able to prove that it wasn't him involved. And so, again, whatever statements that he's made is not connected to our case, but we haven't looked at anything further related to his case involved.
Okay, thank you.
Detective, when you started putting all these pieces together, what was going through your mind? Was there a part that something came out that you were like, wow, this is really solved?
Yeah, well, so years went by and we were just having very, very distant matches. And when we found the record for Stephen Simcak that was born in 1883, that was like the piece of the puzzle. Once we had that Simcak family tree, and we started getting DNA from them, it just kind of, fell like dominoes.
And what was your reaction when you started, after so many people had worked on it up until you got, were you assigned the case or you took it on? Or?
Yeah, Chief Schultz, he let me work on the case. I was very happy he let me work on it. And then when we were able to identify him, I was very, very happy and excited.
Have you talked to the other detectives that worked on it in the past? And
Yes.
What has been their reaction?
Everybody from this department is extremely happy that we were able to bring closure to the Major family.
Are you using this family tree technology to solve any other cold cases in the city?
At this time, no, because we don't have any other cold case homicides that we're working on at this time. And hopefully we never have to use it again. But it was an outstanding investigative tool that we were allowed to be a part of. And thankfully, we had such great local partners that have helped us along the way with this. Hopefully, we just never have to go that route again. But we're very thankful that the Parabon Nanolabs was there and has helped us, and they put together so much work involved in this case that we thank them very much for everything. They took extreme ownership in helping us solve this case.
And I guess in retrospect, are there any red flags in the suspect's behavior or the way he lived his life that, may have now you think, well, maybe he did something to do with it, or any red flags since then?
No, and that's with the fact that he passed away in 2018, that's one of the challenges that face us. And again, we want to get that further closure for the family. We believe they deserve that last piece. We hope to get it, but this is kind of like a new mystery for us, learning more about Mr. Simcak, and there's so many emotions that go involved in this, because as Mark had mentioned, and as Detective Slay had mentioned also, is this family has nothing to do with this case. It was one individual, and our concerns go out for the family too. This was a difficult decision coming here today, but we felt that it was important to share our results with our community, to let them know that we're still working on this. It was important for us to share these developments with the family so they knew that about these new developments. And again, we want to find out why, and so we're not going to quit until we do.
And then in regards to this taking so long, is it really just a matter of a lack of technology, or just kind of speak to that?
Well, some of it has to do with technology, yes. I mean, we didn't have the ability to test DNA until 1996 approximately. And, you know, every year technology speeds up and we see new things. And that's been incredibly helpful. But to see the amount of work that investigators and officers and our local partners put forth starting on January 11th for 42 years is an incredible testimony to the dedication, loyalty, and ownership of everybody here at the Willoughby Police Department. And we've always, like I said before, we've made that promise to the family that we weren't going to quit on this, and we didn't. And we're sad that it took 42 years. But there was a lot of great work that went into it, and we'll continue with a lot of great work from here on out.
Any other questions?
We greatly appreciate all of you coming here today and spending some time with us. If you have further questions afterwards, Lieutenant Begovic can be reached as our public information officer. He has also got some brief information printed out that he'll hand each one of you before you leave. Again, thank you for coming here today.
Yeah, I am.